Talk Radio.
Mi chiamo Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit ne AKANFO NANASOM da medinde ojirafo kwesi ranehmpata akan. Akwamumain amaruka etipi mu ojiramain mu. Greetings to all Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people, meaning African black people today. This AKANFO NANASOM Day, ancient, authentic, Akan Ancestral Religion Day. My name is Ojirafo Kwesi Ranehmpata Akan, Ojirafo of the Akwamu Nation in North America, within Ojiraman, the purified nation, Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit people in the Western Hemisphere. Yet I say we thank you for tuning in to the broadcast. Once again, we are opening up the chat room. As we open up the chat room, if you have a question or a comment and you're on the phone line, simply hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you have a question or a comment you'd like to make in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. If you do not have a username in Blog Talk, you can sign up for one quickly in Blog Talk so that you can interact in the chat room. And as the chat room is opening up, we're going to place a couple of links in the chat room for information that we will be addressing tonight. So that first link to our page, Akonguasua, and we also have a link to a specific article that we're going to place in the chat room. And then we will also place a link into the Home Economic Development page. So, for individuals who are new to the broadcast, we have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. On Joda, Monday nights, we have AKANFO NANASOM, of course, ancient, authentic, Akan Ancestral Religion. So we deal specifically with the Akan expression of Nanasom, of Afurakani Afuraitkaitnit Ancestral Religion and its various implications. We're going to get into that. On Tuesday nights, Ojira, which means purification. It means purification in the Akan language, of course, also in our ancestral language of ancient Kemet. It also means a celebration of purification. So we deal with purification of concepts, culture, philosophy, ritual practice, cosmology, and so forth. Misinformation that's being propagated with regard to our ancestral religious practices. So we clarify this information and show how our ancestral religious practices impact every aspect of our lives. Ancestral religion, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion, is the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. In essence, that means through ritual, we incorporate those things, objects, deeds, and entities that we need to incorporate in order to harmonize our thoughts, intentions, and actions with divine order. And through ritual, we restore balance to our lives by rejecting those things, objects, deeds, and entities we need to reject, to repulse, to hate, to repel, in order to restore balance to our thoughts, intentions, and actions, and therefore realign ourselves with divine order every moment of every day. So the ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance. Those are the expansive and contractive poles of ancestral religion. And it's through that process, when we engage the purificatory process, Ojira purification, is through purification that we operationalize Nanasom. Through purification, we operationalize our ritual practices of incorporating law and restoring balance every thought, intention, and action every moment of every day so that we can make decisions, engage in behavior individually and collectively that's in harmony with order so we can preserve ourselves and thrive and at the same time defend ourselves against our absolute enemies fully and complete. This is what we deal with on Ojira Da Purification Day on Tuesday night, Benada, Abenada, Tuesday night. On Awukuda or Akuada Wednesday night, we have Egua Marketplace. And we typically have individuals come onto the program to talk about their Afuraitkaitnit business organization or institution. We also have some shows where we talk about the philosophical approach and foundation for economic development rooted in our ancestral religious values. And in that vein, we published the Okom Economic Development Model, which is an economic development model, of course, rooted in our ancestral religious values. In that publication, when you go to our Okom Economic Development Model page, you will see the publication itself, which you can download. Of course, it's a free download. We have a 4-part video series that we did on Blog Talk, dissecting that economic development model. And you can also, those videos are there on the page. We also have the video talking about economic warfare. We also have the No Parifo Ne Amambre, self-employment and ancestral culture. All of those videos from the broadcast you can download. We also have the list of businesses, organizations, and institutions that have come onto our Egua Marketplace show, sat with us for a couple of hours and talked about their business, talked about their approach to serving the community, their positive capacity through their products and services, and how their ancestral religious values inform their service to us as a community. So you can see their website as well as the links to their interviews, so you can listen to those, to our interviews. In the Okom Economic Development Model, we have the strategy, starve the beast and feed the pride. That means every week, on a weekly basis, you make a determination about what funds you would have potentially wasted with the whites and their offspring, and then you starve the beast and feed the pride. You reallocate those funds away from those white businesses and direct them towards the business, organization, or institution of the week. We are targeting one Afuraitkaitnit business, organization, or institution per week for 52 weeks. We began that process in February, so we are well into that process as a community, supporting different businesses on a weekly basis, organizations and institutions. You will see the list that we have supported so far, the number of businesses on the Okom Economic Development Model page, and then that list is ever growing. So, of course, you continue to check that page. We're targeting one per week for optimal capital infusion. And, of course, as we always say, if you starve the beast and feed the pride, you take $10 you would have wasted at a white business like CVS or Walmart or McDonald's and reallocate that $10 to the business of the week. So you're taking $10 away from a white business and giving it to a black business, making a donation or accessing their products or services. When 1,000 of our people engage that process, that's a $10,000 infusion of capital taken from the whites and their offspring, instead of wasting our money with our enemies. We redirect those funds, starve that white beast, and feed the pride, a $10,000 infusion of capital to a black business that can hire more black people so they can serve the black community at a higher capacity, at the same time employing our people, which, of course, positively impact our families and communities and so forth. If we do not engage this process, starving the beast and feeding the pride on a daily basis, not some isolated boycott, every single day. If we do not engage this process, then by default, we are leaving the funds in the hands of our absolute enemies, the whites and their offspring. Whether they're white Europeans, white Americans, white Hispanics, white Latinos, white Arabs, white Asians, white Hindus, white pseudo-Native Americans, whoever they are, spirits of disorder, the whites and their offspring, we are supporting them and therefore financing our own oppression by default. So we engage the process of starving the beast and feeding the pride. So this is what we deal with on Egua Marketplace Day on Awukuda Wednesday night. So for tonight's show, dealing with AKANFO NANASOM, ancient authentic Akan ancestral religion, and we typically deal with specific aspects of cosmology and culture and ritual practices with regard to Akan ancestral religion. Of course, our people, Akan people, primarily reside in Ghana and Ivory Coast, about 20 million Akan people in those two countries together. We began in ancient Kanat, ancient Nubia. After the fall of Kemet, some of our people migrated to the western part of the continent, reestablished ancient Kanat, for Nubia, the Khanat or Ghana Empire. After Muslim invasions about 1,000 years later, some of our people migrated about 1,000 years ago towards further south, southwest Afuraitkaitnit into the region of what is today's Cote d'Ivoire, Ivory Coast, and Ghana. Reestablished Akana civilization. A few hundred years later, some of our people were taken from those regions and forced into the Western Hemisphere, North, Central, South America, the Caribbean, and Europe, during what we call the Musua Ketie, the Great Perversity, the Enslavement Era. So this is how our people came from ancient Khanat, Afuraitkai, to reestablish Khanat or Ghana. Of course, Khanat is an ancient title of Nubia, meaning the first land, the foremost land, land of the beginning, land of the south. And we continue to utilize that title and identify ourselves as the Khanat or Khani people, Akani people, and so forth. And then we were forced into the Western Hemisphere. So we're the same people, the same culture, same ritual practices, same connection blood-wise to Abosom deities that are connected to our blood circle, same connection to the Nanasom University, the spiritually cultivated ancestresses and ancestors. So when we talk about ancestral religious practice, ancient, authentic Akan ancestral religion, we are talking about our ancestral religious practices that are inherited via our blood circle, that we are born into the world with. We are assigned to specific ancestral clans pre-incarnation. We are assigned to specific Abosom deities, forces in nature pre-incarnation that are connected to our clan. But when we are born into the world, we are already born with our ancestral religion intact. And all we simply need to do is to recall that. And when you have a culture in place, the purpose of the culture is to help every member of the culture to recall what their divine function is based on their ancestral religious practice and cultivate that. When we don't have a culture in place, the people have to learn that and reestablish that, resurrect that, and reconstitute it. Of course, this is what we do here in the Western Hemisphere. So we go into detail about that kind of information, talking about hoodoo and so forth. We just had our Hoodoo Mayan Festival, Hoodoo Nation Festival on October 17th. We have other events coming up. We'll be this weekend on Miminidas, Saturday, November 7th. We'll be in Montgomery, Alabama, doing a presentation on Hukutuntun, the ancestral jurisdiction, the cosmological foundation of creation, the origin of fictional cartoon characters who never existed of any race or in any form, including Jesus and Moses and Muhammad and Allah and Yahweh, Solomon, Sheba, Menelik, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, Buddha, Brahman, and all these fictional cartoon characters. We're going to be dealing with that. So, number of things coming up. So this is the kind of information we deal with on AKANFO NANASOM. But, of course, Nanasom, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, ancestral religion, that also has implications dealing with the way we operate amongst one another, how we function as a collective. And this is where we deal with institution building. One of the 7 principal values of my ancestral nation building is the establishment of institutions. We already have an educational institution. But when you look at the promotional information for the show, we talk about Akonguasua Dine, which is our institution, Akonguasua. Suya means to learn. Akongua is an ancestral seat, so learning from the ancestral seat. Akonguasua, that's the name of our institution. We founded in 13,001, so-called 2001, in Chicago. We've been in D.C. for the past few years. So, of course, we continue this process here. And, of course, for those who know, when you look on the website, you'll see that we are working to raise funds to establish a permanent physical space for the Akonguasua Dine, the center, of course, for our institution of learning, healing, training, employment, and entrepreneurship. Housed within that center, we will develop and establish our Nanasom University. And this is what we're talking about on the promotional information for the show. And this is why we say Akonguasua, our institution, will house our Nanasom University. Nanasom, again, is a catch-all term for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African ancestral religion. We said the decline in the number, quality, and effectiveness of HBCUs, historically black colleges and universities, is a result of the assault against these institutions by the whites and their offspring, and the lack of cultural, political, and spiritual soundness of the administrators of these institutions, which would embolden them to defend their institutions from becoming culturally and physically extinct. With the innovations in technology and with a firm grounding in spiritual, cultural, and thus political awareness, we have the capacity and the mandate to move forward and establish our own universities that are not dependent upon government subsidies. Just as there are accredited universities that have a pseudo-religious foundation, DePaul University, Loyola University, Texas Christian University, etc., we have the capacity to found our own private colleges and universities rooted in our Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, African Ancestral Religious Foundation, real religious universities, colleges, Nanasom. We thus transform our institutions from historically black colleges and universities to true-storically black colleges and universities. Of course, we say our Akonguasua dime will house that. So we have Akonguasua is our institution. Within that institution will be a further institution, which will be Nanasom University. So we can talk about first what we already have, but then we'll also talk about what we will build, and this is also something that something to emulate, a structure to lay the foundation for emulation in other populations of our people around the country. There needs to be a movement, just as we talked about a movement for the establishing of independent Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit towns in America. We can establish charters, establish a town, go through that process, acquire land, put forth the right paperwork and so forth, and establish a city, establish a village, establish a town, and so forth, and we are in control. We have that kind of autonomy, have our own governmental structure, have our own, officials. We use our own titles, of course, but generically talking about our own mayors, city council, men and women, our own police force, and so forth. People establish towns every year. We have the capacity to do that, and we need to be doing that, as well as at the same time our people engage in repatriation to the continent as well. So we need to be operating on all fronts. For those who cannot repatriate to the continent immediately, we need to have something for our people here. We're living somewhere now. You're either going to live in a neighborhood, a black neighborhood, or a non-black neighborhood. You're going to move into an apartment, move into a house, into some area that you do not control, or you're going to take the initiative to establish a region that you do control and to open up schools in those areas where you do control and attract black businesses to those areas, to your new city, your new village, your new town, and establish something that you have some more autonomy within. As long as we're here, we need to establish something independent wherever we are. And when we make the transition and engage in repatriation, we need to do the same thing there as well. So we need to operate on all fronts. The same thing is true with regard to educational institutions. So first, we're going to look at our economic development model. Very quickly, I'll post the link in the chat room for that. And we're not going to go through the whole piece, but there's a specific section we talk about on page 1. This is what we say, and this is directly related to this discussion because we need to have institutions that are rooted in our ancestral religious values. In a natural sense, Okam, which means hunger, means possession in the Akan language, which was the name of the economic development model. In a natural sense, Okam references our innate inclination to possess that which we need to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, protect ourselves, develop ourselves, govern ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves. This constellation of 7 needs resounds the 7 principal values of ancestor, nation-building restoration for Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, delineated within Akwamu Mine, Amadukati, Muli, Akwamu Nation in North America. So we have in one of our publications, Oberima Afurakani Manhood publication, as well as others, we delineate 7 principal values of nation-building restoration, which we call ancestor, which means nation-building restoration. Methods of food production and preservation. Of course, you must feed yourself. If you're going to be an independent nation, you must be able to feed yourself. Have methods of food production and preservation. Methods of curing disease. We can't be dependent on our enemies. We separate from our enemies, establish a land base, and we can't cure ourselves, so we have to leave the land base to go to our enemies to cure disease. That's insane. So methods of food production and preservation, methods of curing disease, establishing a military structure to defend our settlements, our nation. Of course, the whites and offspring will always seek, like parasites, to destroy anything that's built. We should never assume that just because we build something away from them and we're engaged in our own processes like Black Wall Street and things like that, that these criminals, these perverse beasts will not seek to destroy what we build. They will, and we must be ready for that ahead of time, even before we build. The next piece, 4th principal value, establishing institutions of education, training, and cultivation. Institutions that teach food production and preservation. Institutions that teach curing disease. Institutions that teach the establishment of a military structure. Institutions that teach engineering and textiles and everything else. Training institutions, educational institutions, cultural institutions for spiritual cultivation, teaching the values of the nation, the values of the people understanding who they are, valuing who they are based on their spiritual makeup. Once they value who they are, then they will value the nation that has been built. They will value the protocols that went into place to establish the nation. They will then seek to defend the nation. They will seek to perpetuate the nation because they know who they are and they respect themselves and respect us as a group. If you don't know who you are, then you will have no respect for what has been built. In fact, you won't see a reason for it being built because you're like, we can just live among our enemies, the whites and offspring, because you do not know who you are. But when you awaken from that kind of coma, that natural inclination to work in harmony with Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, just like the cells in your organs are naturally inclined to work interdependently with one another as cells, co-cells within a specific organ. We are naturally inclined as Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, and only Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, in harmony with one another because that is how we're designed. So when we awaken from this coma, then we naturally move in that direction. We value who we are. We value what our individual and collective functions are. We move in that direction, and therefore we establish institutions, cultivate ourselves. We learn the value of who we are. We learn the value of who we are as a group. And then we value the nation that we have built. We value the purpose of developing a nation so we can function harmoniously and protect ourselves. And again, we value the protocols that went into the development of that nation, and we seek to defend the nation and also perpetuate the nation and the institutions built in the nation. Of course, sound systems of governance and jurisprudence is the 5th principal value of nation building. Construction of homes on acquired land, 6th principal value, and the production of clothing, manufacturing, textiles, and so forth is the 7th principal value. And the 7 principal values of nation building are connected to the abosom, the deities that govern the solar, lunar, and planetary bodies that animate our 7-day week. So that holistic 7-day cycle animated by forces in nature that govern all natural cycles on Earth, including our chronobiological cycle, 7-day cycle that our body goes through. It's a holistic cycle. So it's a holistic set of principles is what we're dealing with. So, but when we talk about that constellation of 7 needs, to sustain ourselves, heal ourselves, protect ourselves, develop ourselves, govern ourselves, shelter ourselves, and clothe ourselves, that 4th principal value is establishing institutions. And of course, this is what we're talking about tonight. Institutions rooted in our ancestral religious values. There's a direct relationship to ancestral religion and our politics. That's direct relationship between ancestral religion and the development of our institutions, development of our people, the defense of our people, and so forth. So when we talk about Nanasom University, and we said in the promotional portion of the show, historically black colleges and universities, when there's a decline in their number, quality, and effectiveness, as a result of the assault against these institutions by the whites and their offspring, and the lack of cultural, political, and spiritual soundness of the administrators of these institutions, which would embolden them to defend their institutions from becoming culturally and physically extinct. Now, we just talked about the fact that when you embrace ancestral religion, you find out who you are spiritually. You connect with the divinity that dwells in your head region that was assigned to you pre-incarnation, as we said before. Connect to your direct blood ancestresses and ancestors who are assigned by the Supreme Being, the Great Mother and Great Father, to guide you throughout the course of your life, because they're connected to your ancestral blood circle, your clan, and those who are spiritually cultivated within your ancestral blood circles are the ones who are assigned to you to assist you in your own development, helping you to understand who you are and how you ought to function based on clan affiliation. You come into the world with that. So you value yourself, your value, your worth is based on and rooted in the function you are to execute in creation. It's like every cell in the body has a specific function to execute in the body. Liver cells, heart cells, spleen, pancreas. Their worth and value with regard to the body is determined by the function they execute in the body, and they're designed to execute. So the value of the heart cell is determined by the function it supports. It supports heart function. The value of the liver cells, spleen, pancreas, and everything else. Our value as cells within the great divine body is determined by the function we are to execute in the great divine body. Some of us are immune system cells within the great divine body, so we're naturally inclined to defend the community. Some of us are healing cells within the body, renal cells within the great divine body, so we're naturally inclined towards maintaining an electrolyte balance, mineral balance in the body, healing and so forth within the body, so we're naturally inclined to heal our people, learn healing art, modalities, and so forth, so when our people become sick physically or spiritually, emotionally, and so forth, we can help restore balance. So no matter what kind of cell within the great divine body of the Supreme Being, the great Mother and Father, Aminet and Amen, Nyamewa, Nyame we are, our worth and our value to the great divine body and to one another is determined by the function we came into the world to execute, came into the creation to execute, came into the great divine body to execute. So when we understand that, because we engage in ritual incorporation of divine law and the ritual restoration of divine balance, Nanasom, ancestral religion, we learn exactly who we are, what our divine function in the world is, how to execute that function, the spiritual forces that have been assigned to us that we can utilize to wield our energy to execute that divine function, and so forth. We know our value, we know our worth, we know our connection to other Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people. We know who our enemies are, the whites and their offspring, and spirits of disorder. We understand that, so we move in that knowledge. We move in that understanding. And that means how we engage as far as relationships with one another, with family, as well as politically with our enemies, and how to neutralize and ultimately eradicate our enemies and neutralize their attacks upon us when you know who you are. So this is why we say when you understand that, that will embolden you to defend your institution. You'll respect who you are, respect your institutions, respect why they came into being, why they're needed, why they're necessary, why you don't need to be integrated with the enemy and so forth. You respect the protocols that came into existence to bring that institution into existence, and you will defend it and you will seek to perpetuate. But if you don't have that knowledge, because you haven't engaged your ancestral religious practices, you haven't aligned with who you are, and you don't refresh and rejuvenate that understanding, then you're just a Negro walking around. You're just a Negro administrator. And so when the whites and their offspring begin to attack your institution, you don't have that fortified understanding to seek to defend them. You seek to align with your enemy and make excuses. So the whites and their offspring are assaulting these institutions. Go into some information about how they are assaulting the institution, and then we're going to get into some more information with regard to what we're already doing, and how we're going to build on that. What we are already doing with our institution right now, Akonguasua, and the larger institution that will be born and housed within Akonguasua, which is Nanasom University, how that can also be a model and will be a model for other individuals who are practicing your ancestral religion. You can establish a university as well. And the benefits of that, tangible benefits. So we'll talk about the tangible benefits of our institution right now, as well as tangible benefits that will arise from Nanasom University. We're going to go to an article right quick. This article is written by Dr. Jahi Issa. Very important information. Dr. Jahi Issa, who was based in Delaware, he wrote an article which is very influential, The Ethnic Cleansing of Historically Black Colleges and Universities in the Age of Obama. So, just to give you some detailed information, we don't have to read the entire article, but we want to hit on the most, important points. So, he starts off by saying, despite the long and loud verbal commitment of the Black misleadership class to HBCUs, the deference and dependence of Black leadership to corporate ethics and our corporate donations has caused them to endorse policies that are effectively phasing out our HBCUs. Within a generation, we may see the end of historically Black institutions of higher learning. Recall the third principal value of ancestral nation-building restoration is a military structure to defend whatever you build, defend ourselves physically against direct physical assaults against the whites and their offspring, but also culturally, also politically, also spiritually, on every level. Intellectually, the whites and their offspring are waging chemical and biological warfare, physical warfare, intellectual warfare, psychological, pseudo-spiritual, and so forth, political, cultural, on every level. So, he says, for more than 100 years, HBCUs have educated African American leadership. Although the mission statements of most HBCUs do not state this fact, HBCUs grew out of the social disorder and aftermath of the American Civil War, a period which constitutionally brought millions of formerly enslaved Africans into citizenry in the United States. Similar to colleges and universities that were created for religious groups such as Catholics, Jews, and for other immigrant groups, HBCUs were created in reaction to the de facto marginalization created by a European American hostile society. Because of the efforts of the civil rights movement, HBCUs were finally recognized as important institutions and were given special status for federal funding. However, over the past few decades, HBCUs have been targeted as being too quote-unquote Black, and many states are progressively trying to eliminate African Americans from these institutions that have served as a buffer zone for the Black middle class. Some HBCUs have and are going through hostile takeovers in order to turn them into white educational facilities and thereby permanently eliminating the African American middle class. That's their goal. And he gets into some detailed information with regard to that. And so we don't have to go through all of the information. He talks about how our people perform better at HBCUs, according to the National Science Foundation. HBCUs graduate more than 33% of all African Americans earning bachelor's and doctoral degrees, almost double that compared to African Americans attending dominantly white schools. And then he goes into some more information with regard to some economics. We want to get down to some, scroll down past that. And we have the link. Actually, this article's been posted in a number of different places. This particular link is at blackagendareport.com, where it was published there. So you can go to that. So let's scroll down real quick. I just wanted to get to a couple of, talking about the takeover of these HBCUs. Now, in the age of Obama, of course, is one of the whites in our offspring. And we've talked about that before. He's the mulatto sired by the white slave master to be placed at the head of the big house, the head of the plantation where the white slave master retires. They often rape a black female so that she can give birth to the mulatto son, a spirit of one of the white cracker ancestors, deceased relatives who would enter that womb, operate through a light brown body, but he's spirit of a white cracker relative, and he would take over the big house, or the quote-unquote White House, and administer the plantation and expand the plantation and so forth. Only the foolish people on the plantation who were enslaved will believe that because he was light brown, that the new master in the slave house has been placed there to help us out. In reality, he was placed there to continue the policies of the plantation and further expand the plantation. And the intelligent people on the plantation will rise up, kill him, kill the slave master, kill the slave master's wife, children, family, burn down the plantation and free themselves and establish their own independent nations, which we did on a consistent basis until we forced the end of enslavement. The foolish would simply believe that the new slave master, the light brown slave master, is our ally. In reality, he's our enemy. So he says, although President Barack Obama, his HBCU Executive Order 13532 encourages private investment in HBCUs, however, research proves that corporate partnerships is not new to HBCUs, nor are their historic inputs solely motivated by financial gain. Not long after the end of Reconstruction, northern white capitalists sought extreme ways in which they could control the ebb and flow of African American education. This was done to curtail the rapid development of African American educational institutions immediately after the Civil War. For instance, from 1865 to 1880, federal agents documented that there were thousands of African American schools operating throughout the South, independent of white control. From 1865 to 1880, we had opened thousands of schools after the Civil War, and they were independent of white control. So what do we look like right now? That's 1865 to 1880, thousands of independent schools. What do we look like right now? We have a handful of African-centered schools and homeschool networks, but the vast majority of our people are in white institutions. We had thousands at the end of the Civil War. So, of course, we have a precedent for establishing independent educational institutions. It doesn't, of course, simply begin here. We are the people who founded educational institutions and universities and so forth thousands of years ago, and we've been engaged in that process for thousands of years. Every other group of quote-unquote people, the whites in our offspring, learned about universities and education and so forth from our people. So it's just a long line, a long historical line of development. It's quite natural that we would engage that process. When northern white so-called benevolent groups finally reached the South with mythical preconceived notions that they were coming to quote-unquote civilized former wretched enslaved Africans, they were astonished to see that African Americans had already established their own school systems fully equipped with African American teachers. These schools' full missions were self-determination and political control over the regions of the South in which they were the majority. The high level of African American political education created a problem for the nation after the Compromise of 1877, since African Americans were no longer allowed to exercise political autonomy in the South. Strategies were devised on the federal level to control the nature of their education. The federal government, along with the corporate conglomerates in the North, believed that the only way they could ensure the continual flow of cheap labor in the South was to train African Americans in a way that they would not advocate for political control of their community. Furthermore, there was another important issue at play. That was African American competition with whites for high-skilled jobs. The solution was a new type of training for Southern African Americans was called industrial education. This type of schooling served the purpose of supervising and training African Americans to be subservient to white interests. Schools such as Hampton, Tuskegee, and Delaware State were devised as the alternative to the African American independent schools that advocated self-determination after the Civil War. The corporate hand-picked spokesman for this new type of schooling was none other than Booker T. Washington. One must remember that Washington's entrance exam to Hampton University was sweeping the floor. That's how he got into Hampton. It's like you take a test now, to get into a university, it's test to get into Hampton. Can you sweep the floor? You sweep the floor, okay, you can get into Hampton. The ultimate goal of Hampton was to control the emerging black leadership of the Jim Crow South and train African Americans in the corporate labor needs of the New South. The financial backing of Hampton University and what would later be Tuskegee was provided by white northern corporations and philanthropy. This corporate industrial style of form of education continued to dominate Southern higher educational institutions long after the death of Booker T. Washington in 1915. Then he goes on to talk about the White House Initiative on HBCUs, encourages corporate collaboration, showing that just as it happened back then, there was an independent African-American school movement, thousands of schools that we established with our own teachers, focused on raising up our people to control our communities where we were the majority. It was all about self-determination, independence from the whites and control. Of course, we also had a movement of establishing black towns, as we talked about earlier. And that movement of establishing black towns was born out of the Maroon movement, the Akonguasua, the warrioress movements, where we waged war against the whites and offspring, killed them, massacred them, including the Gullah Wars and so forth, established independent nations within the United States before the end of enslavement and forced the end of enslavement. So we had ancestresses and ancestors who forced that. After the end of enslavement, we forced abolition, forced the end of enslavement. Then we still have that tradition of establishing independent black towns now, establishing independent educational institutions, training our people to be self-determined. 7 principal values of nation building, we were engaged in those processes. Also, many of our people still practicing our ancestral religion. Hoodoo, which is the Akan ancestral religion in North America, Juju, which is the Yoruba ancestral religion in North America, Vodou, of course, the Fon and Ebe ancestral religion in North America, Grigri, which is the Bambara ancestral religion in North America. We were still engaged in our process. With the Gullah Geechee tradition, we had ancestral religious practices as our foundation before they really were forcing Christianity, and some of our people were biting on that. Before that took place, we had our own ancestral religious practices, establishing our own institutions for self-determination, feeding ourselves, clothing ourselves, curing ourselves, defending ourselves, and so forth, and passing on that knowledge. The whites and offspring saw that as the threat, not only that we would simply be self-determining, but also they saw what happened with the Akonguasua, the warriors and warriors. If they see that we would become established and self-determining, then they feared the larger implications that we would step outside of that self-determined posture and begin to massacre them, which would have been intelligent, of course. So they wanted to control the educational institutions, shut down our independent system of education, replace that with the industrial education, as you talked about, simply training our people to serve the whites and their offspring, introduce Christianity to dumb down our people and so forth. This is what was going on. That was that battle. Then he goes directly to what's happening right now. HBCUs are on life support. Obama comes along in the brown skin and so forth, and Negroes assume that he's trying to help HBCUs, and in reality, his goal is to destroy them and eradicate them. The first stage of the process, infusing all these corporate dollars, changing the laws, accusing them of being discriminatory if they don't have more white teachers and more white students. And now, as he talks about in the article, you have some historically black colleges and universities. They have money set aside, millions of dollars set aside through subsidies universities, and now they have majority white students in these universities and majority white teachers in some of them. So it's a historically black college or university, but the majority of students are white, the majority of the teachers are white. Those millions of dollars coming from the government to support HBCUs are actually supporting a white-dominated school, but they're still called HBCUs, so they're getting the money that should be supporting black students, and they're supporting white students. So this is all by design. The goal of the white offspring, the goal of Obama, is to eradicate historically black colleges and universities, and of course push homosexuality and bisexuality and everything else wherever he, lays his hand. So he goes into some detail about that and talks about the black colleges and white cultural hegemony, signs for the future, and so forth. Talking about some of those statistics, and he goes on. So that's a snapshot. It's a very good article. You can download that. Again, Dr. Jahi Issa, and the title of the article is "The Ethnic Cleansing of Historically Black Colleges and Universities in the Age of Obama." So we just want to go through that information. So when we're talking about that, we're talking about these institutions, we have a true historical precedent that, of course, of establishing the first educational institution on earth and continuing that process. We're naturally inclined towards that process, educating our people with the things that we need, things we like to innovate, things that we need to survive, and things that we need to thrive, innovations and so forth, scientific, artistic innovations in every field. So that's natural for us. And of course, in the condition we find ourselves in, being politically and culturally, economically dependent on our enemies, the white offspring, of course it makes sense. It's just natural, it's instinctive for us to move forward and begin to engage in self-determination. That's a natural process. So we move in that direction. When we shed pseudo-religion, pseudo-culture coming from our absolute enemies, the white offspring, and re-embrace ourselves, then we're naturally inclined to work with one another. That natural inclination manifests within us. We begin to work together and establish collectives, and those collectives give birth to various institutions, to various kinds of institutions that we need to sustain ourselves on every level with regard to nation building. Now, go forward and say in the promotional aspect of the show, we said with the innovations in technology and with a firm grounding in spiritual, cultural, and thus political awareness, we have the capacity and the mandate to move forward and establish our own universities that are not dependent upon government subsidies. And we said there are accredited universities that have a pseudo-religious foundation, like the Catholic universities and so forth, Jewish universities, Christian colleges, and all that nonsense, Islamic ones as well. We have the capacity to found our own private colleges and universities rooted in our real Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African Ancestral Religious practice. We have an African Ancestral Religious foundation, Nanasom, whether it's hoodoo, juju, voodoo, whatever that expression is. Ancestral religion is the foundation for our universities. Of course, we will have all different fields of endeavor: engineering, medicine, language, every aspect of, just like any other university, but our foundation, of course, is our ancestral religion, Ancestral Religious University. Now, let's look at where we already are and what we are moving towards, how that can be a foundation for moving forward, as well as, something that our people can emulate and replicate wherever we are. We have, as we said, Akonguasua, and you can go to our Akonguasua page, and we'll just go through some of that information. Akonguasua is the central institution of learning within Akwamu Mine, Amarukai Tipimu, the Akwamu Nation in North America. Akonguasua is the combination of the three Akan terms, Akongwa and Suya. The term Akongwa is descriptive of a form of a gua, a seat, a chair, throne. Suya means to learn or study. Akonguasua describes the nature of our institution being that of learning from the ancestral seat. And so we go into some detail about that information. The basis of the instruction within Akonguasua can be found in our publications and services on our ojirafo.com website, asankofajuma.com website. We have 17 books that we have published, and then we have our services as well. So we'll get into some of that. We talked about how our institution began in 13,001 in Chicago. We located to Washington, D.C. in 2009. All of our books, articles, broadcasts, we have 187 broadcast archives out here on Blog Talk Radio now. This is number 188. All of our workshops, broadcasts, books, articles, entrepreneurial program are born of Akonguasua, of our institution, and are a product of the work that we have been doing within the Oman, the nation, the community, for free since 13,001. So we talk about some more information, and then we talk about Akonguasua Dain. Dain means room, it means house, it means structure. So the Akonguasua Dain, of course, we are raising funds to establish a physical space for our center. We've already been doing the work, and we're continuing to do the work. We want to establish a space in D.C. so that we can expand upon the work that we are already doing. What is some of the work we're already doing? Of course, we have, when you look at the page, we talk about the 3 different aspects of the institution. Nkom, ritual observances, healing, Adesria, classes, trainings, workshops, broadcasting, lectures, and Nhomane Ejuma, publishing, distribution, employment, and entrepreneurship. So first, when we talk about our 17 books and publications, let's look at something tangible right away that benefits the community immediately. Not only the information from the 17 books, all of the ebook versions of our 17 books we make available as free downloads from our website. It doesn't matter if you don't have any money. All 17 of our books are free downloads. All of our 60-plus articles are free downloads. All of the 187 broadcast archives are free downloads. But when people see this free books, it's dealing with ancestral religion, culture, health, holistic health, true historical information, behavioral health, and so forth. And we're going to get into some of that, things that tangibly assist our people right away. When you look at holistic health, for example, our Nkwamua Whole Life Journal, we're talking about natural foods and so forth, the various diseases that our people suffer from, heart disease, diabetes, high blood pressure, a number of different things, obesity and these various different things, lung cancer, emphysema, all these different things, totally preventable. The suffering that we go through on a regular basis, the money we waste on medications and so forth, the stress that arises from suffering from these chronic illnesses and so forth, all can be overcome simply by changing our minds. We've had people study our publications, change their diet, change their lifestyle just from one read of our publication, talking about, for example, the negative effect of marijuana upon abatum or melanin. We've had people stop smoking weed from one reading of our articles on melanin and marijuana and so forth, as well as through our Akumasa, substance abuse abstinence, a ritual method to overcome substance abuse addiction and so forth. So we've had people able to get off of drugs and alcohol and so forth through ancestral religious practice, studying our work, transforming their diets, transforming their health for the better, saving money at the same time. When you transform your health, transform your diet, you stop spending money on cigarettes, stop spending money on alcohol and so forth. You're saving money, you're starving the beast and feeding the pride, you're enhancing your health, you're changing your mindset, you're no longer being controlled, allowing yourself to be controlled by stress because you have control over your mind, you have control over your focus. You start to engage in entrepreneurial endeavors so that you can benefit yourself, generate income and so forth. These different things just from studying our free publications. Life transforming. When you transform yourself, you also transform the relationships you have with your children, other people who are connected to you in a positive capacity. Direct, tangible benefits of our institution. Then you get to the section where we talked about our publishing of the soft cover versions of our books. The ebook versions are free. The soft cover versions we publish, we print in-house on our own printers in color. Our 17 books range between $8 and $11. The vast majority of them are $9 or $10. One is $8, one is $11. The other 15 are either $9 or $10. But we have an entrepreneurship option. We have a distributor option for people who like to work for themselves, not working for us, but working for themselves, and become distributors, which we call no kwarefo, those who disseminate truth. You become a kwarefo, a distributor. You purchase the books from us wholesale, and then you sell them retail to generate income for yourself. Any one of our people, any one of you, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, only, of course, African Black people, only, of course, you can become a distributor immediately. Doesn't matter what your previous work history is. It doesn't matter any of that. You can become a distributor immediately. We have the information on the website, and you can begin to generate income for yourself. So we're not just talking about information or having debates or, doing little lectures and charging people a great deal of money. When we do presentations, for example, we go to Alabama on this coming weekend. We've been to Connecticut or been to Jersey, Philly, Texas, wherever we go. North Carolina, we do not charge an admissions fee for people to come and hear us do a presentation. We also give away a copy of one of our books, our softcover books, for free to everybody who comes. So you come to a free presentation, you also leave with a free copy of one of our books. So we're not engaged in this nonsense. We're talking about real information, disseminating information, impacting the community in a positive capacity. So when you come to the institution, even just connecting online and so forth via the broadcast and learn about this information, you can immediately derive another tangible benefit, which is you can begin to generate income by becoming a distributor, purchasing wholesale, selling retail. You're disseminating information that can transform the lives of our people, help them overcome these addictions, help them overcome self-destructive behaviors, transform themselves spiritually so they're more spiritually focused, disciplined, engaged in productive behavior, rejecting self-destructive behavior, whether it's physically, through health, as well as behaviorally. You're helping to transform the community with relevant information, but you're also engaged in economic activity that's benefiting yourself, your independent entrepreneurial endeavors, and so forth. So it's a win-win all around. That's a direct, immediate, tangible benefit from our institutional practice. We also have workshops. We talked about the Sankopa Juma. We have Akonguasua, substance abuse abstinence, a ritual method for that. Akumadan, domestic abuse neutralization. Akumatra, overcoming transcarnational suffering, intergenerational suffering that holds people back because of what has taken place within their families, sometimes domestic abuse and other kinds of abuse and so forth, and trauma. And people are controlled by that, and that leads to depression, anxiety, and years of chronic depression, anxiety, and other kinds of self-destructive activities, self-destructive behaviors, trying to cope with these different things. Through ancestral religious practice, people can overcome these things. And then they can begin to lead productive, self-affirming lives. So we have that capacity, and we teach that kind of information. We have our Obedima Afurakani manhood workshops based on our book, Obedima Afurakani Manhood. And then, of course, we have that training on video so people can get the book, download the book for free, or they can purchase the book as well. In addition to downloading it for free, we can reach Afurakani young men, young males as well as adults, wherever they are, right where they are right now. And they get that manhood manual, Obedima Afurakani Manhood, that's their manual for manhood. And it transforms their lives, and since people have downloaded that book and ordered it from around the country and different parts of the world. Hold on one second. Okay. So that's another tangible benefit. We're reaching and transforming lives and mindsets so our people can stop engaging in self-destructive behavior or even prevent them from engaging in self-destructive behavior when they understand who they are. what their function in the world is as an Afurakani, Oberima Afurakani man. So these are tangible benefits from our institution building activities that are ongoing. We also have our Sankofa Juma training including videos and related books and so forth, training behavioral health professionals in our community, social workers, psychologists, psychiatrists, case managers, teachers, and so forth, on how to introduce culture into their therapeutic interventions with their clients, whoever they're working with, whether they're in therapeutic foster care or behavioral health, or they're teachers working at schools, alternative schools, wherever it is. Introducing culture so they can approach, that therapy, the so-called therapy, their therapeutic interventions from a whole life perspective. So we have an Kwamua Whole Life Journal. That's like the manual for that. We have an Afura Whole Life Intervention therapeutic model showing how they can introduce culture to promote that whole life approach to therapeutic interventions with their Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit clients, children, and adults. We have that training for that as well. That's on video as well, and the publications and so forth, so people can download that, which they have done, go through that whole process, and immediately after going through that process, when they engage their clients, engage youth and families and so forth, they can help to transform their lives immediately. So all of these different things, free services and so forth, that are impacting the community on a daily basis, transforming the community on a daily basis. And then, of course, we have our broadcast where we go into this information so people can begin to incorporate this information in their own lives, in their children's lives, their family, and so forth, breaking free from the quote-unquote addiction to fake religion, foolish ideas, self-destructive beliefs, and so forth, believing in a fictional cartoon character, Jesus, and white deities, and praying to fictional white deities and all that other nonsense, white holidays and wasting money and so forth, engaging in intelligent behavior. And then when you link Okom economic development to culture, then once we transform our minds and transform our focus, then we begin to move forward economically and redirect our funds. We starve the beast, feed the pride, and that benefits our community as well. So when you awaken culturally and consciously, then that touches every aspect of your life. Not just emotional, not just behavioral, not just communal, but economic as well, political as well. So these are things that are how we're directly impacting the community. When we establish our center, we'll be able to expand the services, expand the class offerings. We have 3 broadcasts on a weekly basis. We'll be able to expand that. We'll have classes right there in the center as well. We've already started our annual communal celebrations. We had the Hoodoo Nation Festival on October 17th. That will be an annual festival. We have a couple of other things that we will be doing annually, including we did in September, the 3rd day of our New Year celebration. We have a 7-day New Year celebration in September leading up to the autumn equinox. It was on September 19th this year. We had that communal celebration. That will be yearly. And, of course, we'll have a conference around the spring equinox as well, and something in the summer. So these different communal celebrations and observances we'll be having that helps diffuse the community, empower the community. We can exchange, network, share information, and so forth. But we'll be able to expand these services. We'll also be able to expand the printing, shipping operations, so there will be employment opportunities within the center once we establish it. We do the printing and so forth out of our residence right now. When we establish the center, we'll be able to expand the printing operation. Of course, for the printing, the packaging, shipping, and all of that, we'll have a number of people engaged in that process, so that those are employment opportunities right there, in addition to the self-employment opportunity that we already have up and running right now, the Noquatico distributor information, distributor option that we already talked about. In addition to that, when people engage these workshops, study this information like the Oberima Afurakani manhood piece, going through the 7 principal values of manhood based on the 7 chapters of the book, and check out the training and so forth, because we have those Oberima Afurakani management training, they can learn that and implement that themselves. If you're working with youth, if you're going to schools, after school programs or weekend programs or whatever, you establish something, and you're working in certain, human services and things like that, you can begin to implement these programs, and people do pay people to come out and work with quote-unquote at-risk youth, because the programs that they have up to this point are not necessarily working. So then they are looking for something that's beneficial for our people, that's uplifting for our people, that's going to help turn our Afurakani men and Afuraitkaitnit young women around. And they get something that's rooted in sound culture and is transformative, talking about melanin, talking about ancestral culture, talking about who we actually are and what our function is and what our direction should be. That's what stimulates our people. So you can engage that process. When you learn about, as we said, as a behavioral health human services agent, how to incorporate culture through our Sankopa Juma piece and the Afura whole life interventions, you can utilize that with your clients. And if you're billing for services, if you're a community support worker or you're a therapist or whatever, and you're billing for services, and you can include that kind of information in the cultural domain of your treatment plan, then you can bill for that service. If you were not utilizing the cultural domain in your treatment plan, and it exists as an option within the treatment plan, you didn't know what to do with it, that's part of the Sankopa Juma training. You can learn how to utilize that domain and see how valuable that domain is, work with your client in that domain, and learn how to, craft your progress notes and so forth, so you can capture those interventions for billing purposes, and you can generate income based on assisting our people in a positive way with regard to implementing culture through this Afura whole life interventions process. So that leads to us not only assisting the clients, but also directly impacting you as someone who's engaged in entrepreneurial endeavor. People who are teaching our Patasasatim or learning our Patasasatim through the workshop and so forth, you can implement that educational curriculum within your home school, who you're working with. We have a number of people who have home schools around the country who use the Patasasatim educational curriculum as part of what they teach in their home schools, as well as, African-centered schools, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit schools. So these things have a direct, immediate, tangible impact on the community. We're already engaged in that process. We've been engaged in that process, and now we're simply raising funds to establish a center so we can expand those various services to a greater degree. That's already happening. But then in addition to that, just like people have independent, child care, pre-K, institutions in their homes and so forth, and some people have larger daycare centers and so forth, and then people have independent Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit schools from pre-K to kindergarten all the way through, some elementary schools, some going all the way through the 12th grade. There are a number of independent Black institutions, some of them African-centered. We need an Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, or African-centered university as well, which is rooted in our ancestral religious values. We don't have that. And we're talking about having the same kinds of curriculums, but of course from a centered, rounded perspective. So no matter what field of endeavor our people are interested in going into, whether it's engineering, whether it's mathematics, whether it's botany, whether it's medicine, no matter what it is, of course, it will be from a grounded perspective. The foundation is ancestral religion, no different than a Catholic university, Jewish university, and so forth, but an ancestral religious university. And that is what Nanasom University, Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit, ancestral religion, the term Nanasom is a catch-all term for that. That is what that will be. And the foundation, of course, is within Akonguasua, our institution, but it will be housed in that institution initially, until, of course, it will grow and expand. That will be a model for other individuals to engage similar processes wherever we are found in the country and different parts of the world. We need to be reestablishing our culture, reestablishing institutions founded upon our ancestral religious values. founded upon our proper understanding of the cosmological foundation of creation, because we engage the forces in nature. It's Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people, and when you're teaching anything in a university, it's all about reality. It's all about nature, whether it's science, whether it's medicine, no matter what it is, it all fits within our cosmology, because the cosmology is a reflection of reality as it is. So this is what we're dealing with. If you have a question or a comment on the phone line, you can hit the number 1 so that we can see that your hand is raised. If you are in the chat room, you like to interact in the chat room, you must log in as a user in order to interact in the chat room. Let's go to the phone line real quick.
Yes, from Jabo.
Yes, I can hear you.
I've discovered this so-called mulatto president doing such things, and one is attacking the black colleges. And I did not know that there was a lot more doctors and other engineers science coming out of black colleges than these other universities. And it's ironic that he is really in the process of destroying that altogether. So now that's my comment. But a question in general, regardless, since we talk about HBCU, would it be more equitable than most of our people that if they chose to go to these so-called four-year universities and find that, they're not getting what they attain, wouldn't it be a different outlook to step away from the universities altogether? That's my question.
Wait, say the beginning part again.
Like the HBCU, some of our Afurakani male and females that goes to these schools, a historical black college, and what is now what's happened to it now because it's now being whitewashed. Shouldn't our people look at other outlets besides going into these so-called four-year universities? That's my question.
Yeah, well, some people are, and now when we're talking about, they've already had begun to, attack the universities as far as the culture of the universities, for the past couple of decades heavily. So when you look at all the insanity going on the campuses, whether it was back in the day like Freaknik and all that other nonsense, and promoting bisexuality, homosexuality heavily on black campuses and integration and everything else, and trying to stamp out any expression of anything culturally grounded, Afrocentric, African-centered, Afuraitkaitnit, they've been engaged in that process since the 90s. So they were already attacking them culturally, and you see a great deal of nonsensical, insane behavior coming out of these colleges, and the kind of mindsets that many of the people have. They're more entrenched in idiocy once they come out. But now they're attacking them physically to finally totally eradicate them. So now there are some, depending on the way, people operate, some of them can be saved. And what's really going to have to happen is people are going to have to stand up to people who are really value them and want to see something change, and if people want to, see what's really taking place, they're going to have to move in the direction of being private in reality. Because as long as the whites and their offspring are making these subsidies, they're going to cut the subsidies out, first of all. They're trying to say it's discriminatory and they shouldn't be giving niggas money for college. That was back in the day. That was 100 years ago, and we don't need to give niggas money for college. That's really what they're trying to say. Even though they set aside subsidies for white universities, of course, but they're already moving in that direction. So, and they're already controlling curriculums and everything else. So the only way they will be able to be sustained and people operating in an autonomous way is they move towards privatization and they begin to rally the community. And we have more than enough money, of course. The money we waste on alcohol, cigarettes, and, fake hair from white people from India and everywhere else that we're purchasing and gluing into our heads and so forth. We spend billions of dollars on that. We have enough money to fund every one of these historically black colleges and universities, as well as hospitals in every black community, just from the billions of dollars we waste on daycare, alcohol, cigarettes, and lottery tickets. So we have the funds So once people, are rallied together, certain percentage of our people, not everybody, we have just a small percentage. There's enough money to actually save all of these colleges. But there has to be a political will, and there has to be a spiritual consciousness, and there has to be a change in the mindset of many of these administrators who are Negroes anyway. They either have to be forced out, or their minds have to change. If not, they are going to go under. There's a possibility of saving them, but that depends on the political will, again, and the consciousness of the people. And they're going to have to move towards privatization in reality, or else the crackers are simply going to take them down because they're trying to rely on the crackers and then hope the crackers won't, try to, infect the curriculum or control them. And, of course, the only reason the crackers aren't participating is to control. So, because of that, some of our people will leave and go to other alternatives and other universities, and they have already done that. We've seen some decline in the, enrollment in many of these universities, a number of different things. At the same time, while there are different strategies, people are trying to save them or looking at what can be done or fighting against, the encroachment of the government and everything else, we should also be talking about establishing our independent schools, going back to pre-white involvement, before they handpicked people like Booker T and everybody else, when we had those thousands of schools, independent Afuraitkaitnit schools after the Civil War, and even before that, when we were establishing our independent black towns and everything else. We need to go back to our original mind state of establishing our own private, independent, religious-based, ancestral religious-based universities that we control, that are designed for ancestor, nation building, and all of its manifestations. That's the key. Yes, we can save what they, some of the ones that they already put forward, but we're going to have to move them in that direction anyway. And some of them won't be saved and so forth. But either way, no matter what happens with them, we need people who are culturally grounded. We are naturally inclined to educate our people, train our people, and so forth. But we need to establish our own institutions that are independent, that we control, and they must be private, and they're rooted in ancestral religion. So you would have thought at this point, for example, after people have been talking about the theory of Afrocentricity or African-centeredness or everything else, that there would have been at least one university like Afrocentric University or African-centered university. There should have been at least one by now. After decades of talking about, since the 80s, and before that, Afrocentricity, or African-centeredness, there should have been at least one Afrocentric university. With some Koreans or some Arabs or whoever comes over here, the first thing they'll do is open up a restaurant, open up a business, and then they'll open up a school. Next thing you know, they got a, Islamic college or, some little Korean college or something else instantaneous. We will talk about things for 40 years and never build an institution based on that. Or we may have some little organization or something like that, but we won't have an educational institution. So we've had people build institutions as far as pre-K through high school. Some, every now and then you have a couple of high schools, but primarily it's either pre-K through 8th grade. A few go through 12th grade. But we need, of course, to have our own Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit high schools, middle schools, elementary schools, preschools, and so forth. But also we need to have our own ancestral religious university. So we need to move in that direction. It's natural.
Another question. You did mention Booker T. Washington. Have you ever done a show particularly based on this man?
No, I haven't done one specifically on him.
Because I recall that. Yeah, I think I recall that it's been like now 100 years since he was, I would say, murdered in the month of November through their so-called dates. So I'm not sure if you talked about him already. That's like my mind, particularly on this. We all hear about him, but we don't really know the perspective of Booker T. Washington. That's why I kind of mentioned him.
Right, no, I haven't done anything specifically on him. So far, as far as a specific individual, the only ones we've done, when we did those special shows like Nana Kwabena Akosan, which is Malcolm X and Akan perspective. We did Nana Kwame Afrani, George Washington Carver, Akan perspective. We did Nana Abena Araminta, Harriet Tubman, Akan perspective. We did Okunfo Kwabena, Denmark VC, and Akan perspective. We did Okunfo Yao, Nat Turner, Akan perspective. So far we've done those specific ones. One of the reasons was because of what was going on. One of the reasons because most of those individuals are Akan. They're part of our Akan ancestral community. So we talked about them from an Akan perspective. But we will do some more shows on specific individuals in our true story here in the Western Hemisphere. Some who are, well known, and some who are not well known that need to be talked about.
I see. Can you drop that on the chat room, the thing you read earlier? I want to look into that more. Cause I think I remember there was an article that talked about that, but I'm not sure if that's the same article. But if you could drop it in the chat room, I would appreciate it. It does say.
Okay. Yes, no problem. Okay, I made answer for that call. Okay, so we just put that in the chat room. Hold on one second. Okay, so that was the Black Agenda report where the Dr. Jahi Issa's article, The Ethnic Cleansing of Historically Black Colleges and Universities in the Age of Obama. So we just put that link back in the chat. Let's go, just want to go quickly through the other information on our page. For the Akonguasua page, so the Akonguasua, of course, is the institution. Akonguasua Dine is simply the structure, the physical structure that we're working to establish for the institution. So, and we talk about the term Dine, and Akan means building a sanctuary. It'll be the physical edifice housing our institution, addressing the following three areas: Nkom, ritual observance and sealing; Adesuya, classes, trainings, workshops, broadcasting, lectures; and Nhomane Ajuma, publishing, distribution, employment, entrepreneurship. We'll be able to expand the services. So we list some of those. We talked about the Ancestral Religious observances. We've had a couple of them already communal this year of 13,016, which started in September for us, September 23rd. We'll have all of our classes in the center, and we're working to establish that center this year, as soon as possible. So we're still raising funds for that. You'll see we have a GoFundMe campaign for that for Akonguasua, but we also have any purchase of one or more of our books automatically assists us with the raising the funds for the center as well. So whether you made a donation via PayPal, whether you purchased one or more of our books, or if any donation of $15 or more, we'll send you one or more of our books anyway if you would like in return for your donation. Any purchase or donation, again, assists us in establishing the physical space so we can expand the services that we are already providing to the community. Then we have the classes, trainings, workshops, lectures. So AKANFO NANASOM, Oberima, Afurakani Manhood, the Pasa System, the educational curriculum, Sankofa Juma, training the behavioral health and human services professionals, Wamu Kasa, which is public speech. So we do presentations here as well as in different cities. As we said, Akuma Sa, substance abuse abstinence; Akuma Dine, domestic abuse neutralization; Akuma Tra, trauma recovery alignment. And then, of course, the broadcast. We'll be doing the broadcast from the center. We'll have the workshops, all of these workshops, training in the center, as well as the publishing piece. But we'll be able to expand the class offerings, including language classes. And again, when you teach language, for example, the Akan language, Tree language, have those classes as well. The Medutun Toro, learning to read and write the Medutu, the Medutun Toro, so-called Medu Nature, classes like that. But that also has a tangible benefit. Not only does it transform the minds of our people and get us more grounded in our own culture, but it also has a tangible benefit with regard to economic activity, because once people begin to learn the language, then they can become teachers of the language. They can teach it at a higher level within a high school or a college and so forth, but even before that, they can go into our independent schools and they can teach language. They can begin to teach. They can go to pre-K, and just like some some people will teach children Swahili, and some people start teaching them Spanish and everything else, how to count and everything else. You'll be able to go in there and teach them the tree language, or go in there and teach them how to read and write certain symbols in the Medusa that helps to, focus their minds on geometry and mathematics and everything else, and artistic innovation and everything else. So you can teach on that level, pre-K as well as in the earlier grades. So you don't have to be an expert in the languages, just teaching the basic fundamentals to children to open up their mind. That becomes a source of revenue for you. You're benefiting the community, but you're also engaged in entrepreneurial activity as well. So you're not just going somewhere to our institution to get deep or something like that so you can sit around and debate people. You can actually impact the community in a positive way, help them advance in a positive way, and at the same time, engage in entrepreneurial activity. When we talk about our establishing the institution as far as the Nanasom University, which will be an outgrowth of Akonguasua. We already have Akonguasua, our institution now. Nanasom University will be an outgrowth of that, so that's something that is upcoming. Training our people in all fields of endeavor, and then once they leave the university, we'll have the same kind of, certifications and so forth, bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, PhDs, and so forth. When they come out of the university, we'll already have relationships. There are over 1.9 million Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit owned businesses in America. Now, the vast majority of them are sole proprietorships, but then you have a smaller percentage, few thousand, that are, larger, mid-sized corporations and larger corporations and so forth. So we develop relationships with these black businesses, channels of communication with these black businesses. They will see how focused and how tight our students are when they come out of these degree programs and so forth. And we will already have a direct line to thousands of companies in reality, so that our people will be able to leave the university and go support and, empower and expand these black businesses, or engage in entrepreneurial activity. So they can, if they are working, they have an IT degree. When they come out of our university, of course, they're grounded in ancestral religious culture. But then they come out with the IT degree, they can go right to, black enterprise, they go right to some other black business, or some smaller black business, or they can engage in some entrepreneurial activity or some consulting and so forth, and support the community with the degree, with the technology, with the knowledge that they have gained through the university. If they're going for medicine, naturopathic medicine and so forth, they become a doctor of naturopathic medicine. Or if they become an engineer, they can go directly to a black business, software, dealing with apps or dealing with cars or doing whatever it is. Whatever capacity you have, whatever talents that you have, we'll link our people up with numerous black businesses so they can leave the university and go directly to those businesses. We have those relationships. They will see kind of quality students that we turn out, and that will be enough for them to bring them on. They'll intern with them first. They will see the kind of quality students that we have, and then they can bring them on. When it comes to accreditation, when you go through the laws of accreditation and so forth, when you deal with a private religious college or university, you can opt to have the accreditation for the state. You can opt for that, or you can opt not to have that. The only reason you want to have that is because dealing with different businesses, they may not want to hire somebody who didn't come from a so-called accredited college, because they don't know whether or not the degree program, meets the standard of, of the state. But when you develop relationships, and our students will be coming out of these colleges to serve the black community, serve black businesses, serve the black community, or engage in entrepreneurial activity, we will already develop relationships with these different black businesses, so they know the kind of college we have, know the kind of university we have. They will know the kind of work that we put in. They will know the kind of focus that the people have. We will have that reputation for excellence and so forth, as well as when they intern, with the businesses, they will see that level of excellence that we cultivate within the institution, within the university. So that's the accreditation itself. And of course, we'll have our own accreditation body. Just like, the Whites and Offspring established their own forms of accreditation, we'll be establishing our own accreditation body within Akonguasua, and that will be connected not only our university, but other universities as well. So we all have a standard. But when those Black businesses see the kind of work that we do and see the level of excellence that we put forward, that we promote, that is all the accreditation that they need, because they want to see what works. They want to have people who work, who are focused, who are intelligent, and can get the job done. When they see the results, that's all they care about. Anybody can be accredited and, they get out and become a lousy employee. That's not what we're talking about. So all of that will be taken care of. So we just want to go through. I thought we saw some information in the chat room. We just want to scroll through these messages right quick, make sure we didn't miss anything. And just give me a second. Okay. I see there were some statements, but they weren't. I don't think these were questions. And some of the statements, they were just posting the information of the things that are coming up. So let me say that. So, and may I say for posting that in the chat room. So, one event coming up, of course, as we said, Meminida this Saturday, November 7th in Montgomery, Alabama, we'll be presenting on our Kukutuntun, the Ancestral Jurisdiction. On November 15th, which is actually an Akwesida of Sunday, November 15th, here in Washington, D.C., we will be presenting on our Kokobo publication, Eradicating Dissexuality, Homosexuality from the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community via Ancestral Religion. So we have a publication, Kokobo, which proves that dissexuality was never accepted in ancient Kemet, going through documentation in ancient Kemet, properly transliterating and translating specific texts from ancient Kemet that the Whites and Offspring seek to misuse as though they were talking about the promotion of dissexuality, homosexuality. We prove, of course, with those proper translations that we actually repudiate dissexuality in those texts. There's a divine prohibition against that. Of course, that's true of Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit people in general. Dissexuality is the nature of the Whites and Offspring because they are sexually deviant spirits of disorder. That has nothing to do with our people. So we proved that in the publication. But then we also did two videos where we talked about eradicating dissexuality, homosexuality from the Afurakani, Afuraitkaitnit community through Ancestral Religion. And of course, just like our people can overcome drug addiction, crack cocaine addiction, alcohol addiction, everything else, there are many programs that are out in the community where people go through that, but we have within our own community, within our own ancestral religious practices and methods to overcome these things, any obstacle put before us. And of course, the Whites and their Offspring have an agenda to promote the sexual deviance and perversity and filthiness of dissexuality, homosexuality, to destroy our people, individuals, and families. That is an obstacle that they have been placing before our people for thousands of years. In reality, we just haven't fallen for that. Some of our people have become, weak and become, fall for that. So we have the capacity to overcome any obstacle, including that perversity. Through the practice of ancestral religion, our people realign themselves, and when you get that information, get that publication, we'll be giving away a free copy of that book to everyone who comes to the event. Part of that movement, the Kokobo movement, is to get free copies of the softcover version of that book to as many of every Black person needs a free copy of that book. The ebook version is already free. You can download it from the website now. Softcover versions our people need to have in their hands so they can study them, they can share them with their children, show them the divine prohibition against this sexuality, homosexuality in our ancient ancestral religious culture, in the Medusa, the hieroglyphs of ancient Kemet, as well as in our contemporary cultures as well. Of course, within our ancestral religious practices of voodoo and juju and everything else, it's against divine order. And our people become rooted and grounded in that, having a true historical reference for that, the different texts of ancient command, and then we can see why the whites and their offspring are waging this war against our people. And we become emboldened against that. Every time they open their mouths to promote that, we recognize this is a strike against us, and we strike back because we know this is the enemy trying to destroy our family, trying to be diverse and open and all this other nonsense. It's about destroying our people. And we have the capacity to overcome our enemies and destroy our enemies and eradicate. So everybody needs a copy of that book. So part of the movement, we're raising funds for that so that we can not only do the free workshops in different cities, specifically on the Kokobo movement, but also when we do those free workshops, we give away a free copy of one of our books to everyone who comes. We've given away over 500 of our softcover books, and we're going to keep that process going. And the only way we can do that, and we have been able to do that in different cities, is through the assistance of the community. So every time you make any purchase or donation that assists us in what we're attempting to do, so we want to take that to the next level. The whites and their offspring are, of course, waging this sexual war against our people on a higher level than they've done before. They've constantly increased that alert level in reality. So we need to crush that, and we need to step up to the plate. If you'd like to support these endeavors, whether it's the Akonguasua DIE, our institution for learning, healing, training, employment, and entrepreneurship, you can go to our website, purchase one or more of our publications. Any purchase of 5 books or more, the first 5 books, we just did a video on that. The first 5 books are foundational. The first 5 books, 20% off. So the first 5 books for $40. Any order of 10 books or more is 30% off. So, for example, the first 10 books is $66. The entire 17-book set is $111. So, of course, that's less than $10 per book. So we have those different discounts. And then, of course, the regular retail price of one or more books ranges between $8 and $11. So if you make for example, some people just order the entire 17-book set for $111. We send that out country, or some people have ordered from outside the country. All of those different things assist us in the work that we are already doing and that we are moving towards to do. When we open up the Nanasom University, that will be a free university. So how are we going to have a free university where, we're offering these different things? With the assistance of the community, with the assistance of our people within the community, not only supporting us as far as publications and so forth, but even the people who will be teaching. We have people who are retired professors, people who have been teaching, some people have PhDs, some people who would like to volunteer 1 day a week of their time to teach a class 1 day a week, once a week or twice a week, or a semester. And they're teaching that class on Tuesday nights and Thursday nights from 6 o'clock to 9 o'clock and so forth. They would like to give back to the community, and they were, working in the IT field. They were working in, they have a degree in biology and so forth. And they would like to teach, biology 101 or, whatever it is. Some of our people would like to participate in that process. Then you can support their businesses as well. You can support our publications as well, and our publications help to fund this process. But this would be a free university, just like you have the University of Phoenix, which is online and accredited and so forth, and those individuals get hired at different positions, and they have a degree program and everything else. Because of technology, we're not hampered the way we once were. We can establish online universities as well as, brick and mortar universities as well. We can engage in this process. We can educate our people. We can have our people who are confident as well as competent, training our people, teaching our people, competent professors and so forth who are grounded in our ancestral religious values. Some of them can't wait to participate in such, an endeavor. They will volunteer their time. We would like to have a free university for our people. You're not dependent on Pell Grants and everything else to go to university. You can go through an entire degree program, graduate from that program, go directly into a Black business organization or institution, whether it's a nonprofit or a for-profit and so forth, or engage in entrepreneurial activity or both. So it's a win-win situation all the way around. So all of those things are coming into play and being, worked on as we speak. So we just want us to put that information out there. And as you go to our website, you'll see some more detailed information on that. We want to introduce this information tonight. It's in connection with Nanasom because it's an ancestral religious-based university. But the Akonguasua is already going on. So again, Coco Boa is coming up. That's the movement to eradicate dissexuality, homosexuality. You can see, in fact, let me put the link to our Coco Boa page right quick in the chat room. You go to the Coco Boa page, you can download the Coco Boa book. You can also order the softcover version of that book, which is $9. And you'll see the information with regard to the movement. You'll see the videos. We have 3 videos. One where we dissect the book itself, which we did on Blog Talk Radio, the video for that. Then we also have 2 other ones talking about the eradication of dissexuality, homosexuality through ancestral religion. Of course, the whites and their offspring, through their propaganda, constantly trying to brainwash our people into accepting that nonsense. But also, when you talk about ancestral religion, you have some people who were child molesters, criminals, rapists, and so forth. When they made their transition, those criminal-type spirits are still hovering around, and they will seek to influence young children within our community as well as adults. And when people are a little receptive to ancestral spirits, discarnate spirits, and so forth, and they start getting these thoughts and these impulses and pushes towards people of the same sex, they are really feeling that, whether they're children or adults, but it's not coming from them. It's coming from the same criminal, child molesting pervert who made their transition, who did the same thing when they were alive. They're still trying to influence people from the spirit realm. And once we recognize that through ancestral religion, you can eliminate them and their influence immediately and completely. And these pseudo-urges that the whites and their offspring will tell you that are natural and you're just naturally attracted to the same sex, leave immediately because they were never your urges in the first place. They were suggestions, influences from perverse source. So this is the value of ancestral religion, to see what's really happening and to overcome that. And that can be overcome by our people, and we can show that information in those publications and share those publications with our people. People have overcome dissexuality simply by studying accurate information and engaging their own direct blood ancestresses and ancestors who snatched that perverse desire right up out of them. So that's the reason the whites and their offspring, one of the reasons they don't want us to be involved in ancestral religion, to begin to see things for what they really are and overcome all of the obstacles the whites and their offspring put before us. So that's why it's key. So please support the work that we are doing. You can go to the Coco Boa page. You can go to our publications page to see all of our 17 books, download all of our 17 books, as well as purchase the softcover versions of the 17 books. Also on the Nhoma page, the publications page on our website, the Nhoma page, NHOMA, you'll see the link at the bottom to the video as well as the document talking about how to become a distributor of our publications. You can do that tonight. You can begin to sell the books. You make your first order. The minimum order is 10 books. But of course, that's at 30% off, and then you sell them retail. So if you bought 10 copies of the Kuku Tum Tum, which sells at $10 retail, you would buy it for $7 each, and then you would sell them for 10, and you make $3 off every one. And every time someone sees the book, they typically sell themselves. On the front cover of the book, we talk about Jesus never existed, Moses never existed, Muhammad never existed. They want to see what's in that book just because it says that on the front cover. And then they realize it's only $10, the book sells itself. So you purchase the first 10, and then you sell them, and then you can get more, re-up, and so forth. So you can begin that process immediately. The entire process is right there on the website. So, again, we have tangible benefits for our community through our institution right immediately right now. And then, of course, over time, as we establish Nanasom University, which will be an outgrowth of Akonguasua, there will be even more tangible benefits. We want to say Yedase. We can end it here. We only have a few minutes left in the broadcast. So Yedase for tuning into the broadcast. We will be back on tomorrow. If you have any questions or comments, you can hit us up on Facebook. Kwesi Akan on Facebook, Ojidafo on Facebook, Afuraitkaitnit on Facebook, Ojidafo on Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. Subscribe to us on YouTube so you can get the updates immediately for the new videos. We'll be posting them on a regular basis, daily basis typically. Connect with us on Instagram, Twitter. Follow us on this page, on the Blog Talk Radio channel page. Click the follow button so you can get the information about the new broadcast that will be coming up. You'll be on the list. And we also have our Afuraitkaitnit, Nanasom. Sometimes we have our own separate social media network that's separate from Facebook that we pay for as a private network. Afuraitkaitnit. And we'll put the link to that in the chat room as well. You can join, create a profile, interact with other individuals here as well as around the world who are studying, our people, of course, only who are studying the same kind of information, so you can network, connect, network based on, economic activity, business interests and so forth, as well as sharing information, sharing experiences. People post blogs, videos, discussions, all kinds, the same thing, images, the same thing that you would do on Facebook, you can do on our separate network on the NAME platform, Afuraitkaitnit.name.com. If you have any questions, just hit us up on one of those social media sites or our regular email address that you will find on the ojidafo.com website, and we can answer those questions. So again, Yedase, we thank you for tuning in. Please support our endeavors, the Akonguasua initiative to establish our institution, the Kokobo movement, overcoming dissexuality and so forth in the community, and Yebeshiabio. We will meet again. Heads up.